Hello and welcome to the Freight FA Brief, where we turn freight market noise into something you can actually use. Today, we're unpacking a big shift that we're seeing in logistics. We're seeing value move away from basic brokerage towards what looks more like a control tower business, something called 4PL. And it's really a style integrated with services that cover customs, warehousing, technology, and even financing. Now, if you're new to this, don't worry. I'm going to walk through what all these terms mean, why they matter, and what it looks like on the ground if you're a broker, a carrier, a 3PL, or even a supply chain executive. So let's start with the basics. I want to quickly go over some definitions. Let's start with a 3PL, which is a third-party logistics provider. And it's basically a company that helps you execute parts of your supply chain. Think about warehousing, transportation, order fulfillment, sometimes even a customs brokerage. They either own or coordinate assets, and they get paid to move and store things. Now, a freight broker is something more specific because brokers don't usually own trucks. They sit between shippers and carriers, and they match loads with capacity, and they earn a margin on the spread between what the shipper pays and what the carrier receives. Now let's pivot to a 4PL, or fourth-party logistics provider. It essentially lives one level above a 3PL. Instead of just executing on shipments, a 4PL really is an orchestrator. They look at your entire logistics ecosystem. Multiple 3PLs, multiple carriers, different modes, different warehouses, and it's all under one management and technology. So if you're a shipper, the difference is really simple. With a 3PL or a broker, you're really buying movement. One lane, one mode, one shipment. However, with a 4PL, you're buying a way of running your supply chain, how shipments are routed and how inventory is positioned, how customs and tariffs are handled, and how everything is monitored. So that's the shift we're really talking about today, because logistics companies are moving from we'll move your freight to we'll run your network. Now, to understand why the shift to 4PLs, we need to understand brokerage margins. They're currently under a lot of pressure. So let's look at what's happening in real numbers. During the pandemic, freight brokers enjoyed strong margins, often in the mid-teens. Several industry analyses put typical gross margins in the 15 to 18% range. But more recent data has shown that those margins have come under pressure. Just recently, FreightWaves looked at a broker sample, and they found that the average revenue per load is around $1,900, with gross margin just under 10%. Other companies have reviewed public brokers and showed that gross margins are slipping from above 16% in 2023 to just above 15% by early 2025. Now, if you're wondering why this is happening, there seems to be a few clear reasons. The first reason is really rate transparency. Technology has made spot rates easier to compare. Shippers can see more of the market in real time. So it's harder for brokers to earn these outsized spreads. Second, the competition. There's simply more brokers, more 3PLs, and more digital platforms, all chasing the similar freight. Third, soft markets. When capacity is loose and demand is uneven, shippers push harder on price, and brokers have to give up margin to keep the volume. If you were to put this simply, the old edge of I know something you don't around pricing has really eroded. The business is still there, but the margin story is less attractive if all you sell is the transaction. And that's really why the bigger players are moving their value proposition up the stack. Now, you can see this strongly in consolidation. When you look at deals and positioning, in April 2025, DSV completed its acquisition of Schenker in a deal worth about 14.3 billion euros. The combined company said it would use its strengthened market position to grow through enhanced service offerings and economies of scale. Deutsche Bahn described the transaction as giving DB Schenker a new owner that promises a unique market position and opportunity for international growth. It's not just about simply buying more trucks. It's about buying more of the supply chain. C.H. Robinson has been doing something similar on the strategy side. Gartner recognized the company as a leader in its 2025 Magic Quadrant for fourth-party logistics, highlighting specifically its AI-powered orchestration and global logistics expertise. Then, in 2026, Robinson announced it was the only company positioned across all three relevant Gartner Magic Quadrants, 3PL, 4PL, and transportation management. That means they are competing as a 3PL and a 4PL plus a TMS vendor, which is really a technology layer that runs it all. So the language you're starting to hear from these companies is orchestration, control tower, end-to-end visibility. These are signals that they are moving beyond pure execution and in owning more of the decision space around freight. For your mid-market brokers and your regional 3PLs, this is the competitive context. You're not just competing with other brokers, you're competing with integrated platforms that can show the customer the whole network picture. One other interesting dynamic that is driving the shift more than ever is trade policy, and more specifically, tariffs. McKinsey's Supply Chain Risk Pulse found that 82% of companies surveyed said their supply chains were affected by new tariffs, with 20 to 40% of the supply chain activity impacted. That's a huge share of stress on the network. When tariffs are changing and trade rules tighten, logistics stops being just about cheap transport. It becomes about compliance and risk management. Suddenly, someone has to understand how to classify goods correctly, manage customs documentation, and decide whether to reroute freight to different ports of different countries. They also have to rebalance inventory across regions, all to reduce tariff exposure risks. And that someone is often the logistics provider. And that's where 4PL style models earn their keep, because they're not just booking loads. They're telling the shipper the most optimized structure in the current environment. So the timing really does matter now. Now listen, margin pressure at the transactional layer plus complexity from tariffs, customs, and nearshoring is really pushing value up into orchestration. So let's take a quick break because I want to talk to you about Freightflow Advisor. Because if you're hearing all of this and thinking we need better clarity before we can even play at that level, there's a tool built exactly for you. This episode is brought to you by Freightflow Advisor, and more specifically, our Freightflow Advisor chat. Here's the problem. If you're running a brokerage or a 3PL or a supply chain team, you probably spend a lot of time doing three things. One, pulling lane rates from different sources, comparing modes, and trying to turn those scattered numbers into a coherent RFP or a plan that your carriers can actually respond to. Freightflow Advisor is designed to act like your 24/7 freight analyst living in your browser. You simply open a chat, type in origin, destination, weight, commodity, and other constraints. The advisor then returns the rate benchmarks across LTL, truckload, rail, and intermodal. It also includes live fuel surcharges, all built within the chat. And it doesn't stop at a single number. You can ask it follow-up questions like, which mode makes the most sense for this lane? Now, on top of rate estimates, Freightflow Advisor can generate carrier-ready RFPs. It drafts scope language, lane templates, and even evaluation criteria. You can export the lane sheets in different formats, CSV or XLS, and send them straight to carriers. So let's talk about pricing real quick. Our free tier offers you 10 quotes and 10 advisor chats per day. Perfect for if you're just testing our tool or running a smaller operation. Now, Pro is going to run you about $24 a month, but it unlocks unlimited rate estimates and RFP tools. And that's really aimed at brokers and 3PLs and procurement teams who quote all day. Now, our Pro desk is around $99 per month, and that adds scenario modeling and predictive capacity signals, great for network planning and a lot of what-if analysis. Now, no matter which plan you choose, under the hood, Freight FA is powered by real-time trucking, rail, and industrial data. It's neutral, but it gives you the intelligence you need before you go to market. So if you're serious, tools like Freightflow Advisor are how you start. You can try it today at freightfa.com. That's freightfa.com. As we shift back to 4PL, I want to quickly touch on what this means for different players. If you're a freight broker, the message is pretty direct. Being fast and friendly is no longer enough, and you have to face that you're living in a more complex risk environment. If you're a carrier or an asset owner, the message is different. You don't need to become a 4PL, but you do need to become the kind of partner that 4PLs and control towers prefer to work with. And what that means is reliable service, clean data feeds, clear lane performance, and a willingness to align to network strategy, not just single loads. Now, if you're a shipper or supply chain executive, you have the most leverage. You can now choose between a stack of transactional vendors or a smaller set of partners who help you design and run your network. The practical move is to start asking different questions. Ask questions like, what's your total landed cost? Or how are you helping us manage tariff and custom risk? How can you support us if we decide to shift our sourcing? Those questions are to push your vendors towards more integrated 4PL style behavior. So as we land this, the core story is pretty straightforward. Transaction level margins in brokerage are getting tighter and they're getting more transparent. Tariffs, customs, and sourcing shifts are making supply chains more complex, not less. And large 3PLs are now consolidating into 4PL and control tower roles to manage that complexity. If you're in freight today, you really have two choices. You can stay at the movement level, or you can start building towards orchestration, understanding networks, advising customers, and owning more of the decision space. The first path is familiar but crowded. The second takes more work, more data, better tools, but it's where more durable value is lining up. If you want to go deeper on this topic, the full Substack article breaks down the numbers and examples behind this shift. You can find it at substack.com and just search the Freight FA brief. Now listen, if you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you share it with a colleague. You can listen to this podcast on Apple and Spotify. You can watch our show on YouTube. And don't forget to follow us on your social media at the Freightflow Advisor on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Until next time, this has been your Freightflow Advisor Brief.